In the heart of Umoma village, surrounded by thick palm trees and the smell of the red earth, Bonaventure and Chima grew up under the watchful but cold eyes of their grandmother, Momonoko. They lost their parents to a car accident when they were barely old enough to remember, leaving them with no one but Momonoko. Instead of love, Momonoko sowed seeds of discord between the boys. Every day seemed like a battle, each brother grappling with a well of anger and resentment. They fought often, bruising each other and breaking household items as though driven by some unseen force. Momonoko would stand aside, watching the mayhem with a strange satisfaction glinting in her eyes. "Look at you two," she'd mutter under her breath, tearing each other apart. "That's how it should be." Bonaventure, the elder, grew bitter. He bore the brunt of Momonoko's harshness, carrying chores that were too heavy for his young shoulders. Chima, meanwhile, grew defiant, learning to match Bonaventure's anger with his own. At the age of 9, Chima was sent to the city to learn the motor parts business. Bonaventure stayed back, trapped in a life of misery, his days punctuated by scorn from Momonoko. As he watched his younger brother leave, he felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Chima was free, but Bonaventure was left in the village, forgotten. Years passed, and Chima thrived in the city. He worked hard, saved, and was eventually settled by his boss, making him an ogre, a master in his own right. His business grew, and his wealth blossomed, but his heart remained hardened toward his brother. He rarely thought of Bonaventure, who was still in the village, worn and weary, toiling under the same roof as their bitter grandmother. One humid afternoon, Chima returned to Umoma. He had no intention of rekindling any bond with Bonaventure, but duty called him back to the village. The reunion was anything but joyful. The brothers met in front of their grandmother's compound, eyes locked with years of resentment bubbling up like lava. "Bonaventure, is this how you've been living?" Chima scoffed, glancing at his brother's tattered clothes and weathered face. Bonaventure clenched his fist. "What do you know about my life? You left and never looked back. It's easy to mock from the city, isn't it?" "You had every chance I had," Chima snapped, his voice sharp. "If you've wasted your life, don't blame me." The words were a match to the flame. Bonaventure lunged forward, and in an instant, the two brothers were grappling on the ground, fists swinging, each of them venting years of suppressed anger. They rolled, kicking up clouds of dust, crashing into the walls of Momonoko's compound. Their grandmother watched from a distance, a small, twisted smile tugging at her lips. "You fools," she murmured, almost amused. The fight carried them into the dimly lit kitchen. They stumbled over pots and scattered embers from the fire pit, each brother growing more exhausted but refusing to yield. Bonaventure's eyes fell on a large mortar in the corner. Driven by blind rage, he lifted it above his head, ready to strike. But then he noticed something odd beneath it, a bundle of fabric, worn and frayed, with two small dolls tied together, back to back. "Chima, look," he said, his voice barely a whisper, holding up the bundle. Chima staggered back, confused but compelled to look. As Bonaventure untied the knotted fabric, the brothers stared in shock at the dolls, bound tightly together. In the silence that followed, a shriek rang out from the courtyard. "You! I'll confess!" Momonoko cried, her voice shaking. The brothers turned, and there she stood, her face pale, her body trembling. She took a step toward them, her old frame seeming frail but her eyes filled with years of secrets. You're the cause?" Chima asked, horror dawning on him. "Yes, I am," Momonoko spat, bitterness dripping from her words. "I wanted you two to hate each other. I couldn't bear to see the joy in your eyes when you looked at each other, even as children. I bound you with this charm so that you'd never find peace with one another." Bonaventure's voice was hoarse. "But why, Mama? We're your blood." "Blood," she sneered, her face twisting with resentment. Your mother, my own daughter, defied me by marrying your father, against my will. I loved her, but she broke my heart. When she died, I cursed her children to a life of misery, to tear each other apart just as she tore my heart. Chima felt his legs weaken. All these years, all this hatred, it wasn't real. No, Momonoku whispered, her voice softening as if realizing the weight of her actions. It was my hate, not yours. Bonaventure glanced at the untied doors in his hand, feeling an odd sense of release wash over him. The hatred, the bitterness, it was as if a fog had lifted, leaving in its wake a profound emptiness. He looked at his brother, and for the first time, there was no anger in his eyes. I'm sorry, Chima, he said quietly. Chima swallowed, his voice thick. And I'm sorry, too. They embraced, the years of pain and resentment dissolving into that single moment. Momonoku sank to the ground, her head bowed in shame. The brothers left her there, walking out of the compound side by side, free at last.